Nanny gave the baby a bath in the cold water from the bathroom sink. But when the father saw, Sarah Johnson was desperate on that January morning in New York City. The apartment's heater had broken overnight, and little Ethan, just 8 months old, urgently needed a bath before his father, Michael Thompson's important business meeting. With hands trembling from the cold and tension, she tried to warm the icy water from the tap using pots from the stove. The baby wouldn't stop crying, and she knew Michael could arrive any moment. That's when she decided to use the kitchen sink, carefully mixing the hot water from the pots with the cold tap water, testing the temperature with her elbow as her mother had taught her years ago. Ethan finally stopped crying when he felt the warm water, and Sarah sighed in relief, cradling his tiny body with all the love in the world. It was exactly at that moment Michael walked through the kitchen door, returning from his morning run. His eyes widened at the sight. His baby boy in the kitchen sink, the same sink where they washed dishes, vegetables, and greens. His expression instantly shifted from surprise to fury. "What are you doing?" he shouted, rushing toward the sink. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Sarah was so startled she nearly dropped Ethan. She held him tighter, trying to explain. "Mr. Michael, I can explain. The heater broke overnight and—" "Broke?" He cut her off, snatching Ethan from her arms. "So you decided to bathe my son in the kitchen sink like he's a dirty dish?" "It wasn't like that, sir. I tested the temperature several times, used clean water from the pots." "Water from pots?" Michael shook his head in disbelief. "Sarah, this is unacceptable. My son is not some animal to be washed in the kitchen sink." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. She had stayed up all night caring for Ethan, who had a slight fever. She had used her own savings to buy medicine and had done everything in her power to keep the baby comfortable and clean. "Mr. Michael, please let me explain. Ethan had a fever all night and Enough!" He raised his hand, cutting her off again. "You're fired. I want you to gather your things and leave my house right now." "But sir—" "Now, Sarah, not another word." Michael stormed out of the kitchen with Ethan, leaving Sarah alone with her tears. She wiped her hands on her apron and began collecting her personal belongings from the maid's quarters. Her fingers shook as she folded the few clothes she owned. 20 minutes later, she stood at the door of the luxurious Upper East Side apartment, carrying a small cardboard suitcase. She glanced back one last time, thinking of the little boy she had cared for with such love over the past 6 months. Ethan had felt like a son to her, especially after the loss she had suffered years ago. Michael watched from the window as Sarah walked down the sidewalk, head bowed. For a brief moment, doubt pricked at him, but he quickly pushed it aside. He was a successful tech entrepreneur and couldn't tolerate such carelessness with his only child. 2 hours later, he was on the phone with the city's most expensive nanny agency. "I need someone to start today," he told the receptionist. "I want a professional with international credentials, impeccable references, and proven experience." "Certainly, Mr. Thompson. We have the perfect person for you. Victoria Reynolds, trained in Switzerland, fluent in 4 languages, and specialized in child development." Michael sighed, satisfied. Now Ethan would have the care he deserved. Victoria arrived 2 hours later, dressed in a flawless suit and carrying a folder of her certifications. She was a 40-year-old woman, her hair pulled back into a perfect bun, posture upright. She presented her credentials with pride and explained her work methodology. "Mr. Thompson, I follow the strictest protocols in childcare. I have experience with the finest families in New York City and abroad," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Your son will be in absolutely capable hands." Michael was impressed by the new nanny's professionalism. Finally, he had made the right choice. But Ethan wouldn't stop crying. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. From the moment Victoria took over, the baby showed constant restlessness. She followed every protocol to the letter. Fixed feeding times, controlled room temperature, age-appropriate educational toys. But something was missing. "Is it normal for him to cry this much?" Michael asked worriedly on the 3rd night. "Some babies go through adjustment periods," Victoria replied, consulting her manuals. "Perhaps he was used to less orthodox methods," Michael nodded, remembering the scene in the kitchen. Surely Ethan was just getting used to proper professional care. But the nights grew increasingly difficult. Ethan cried for hours, refused milk, and seemed inconsolable. Michael started arriving late at the office with deep dark circles under his eyes. Meanwhile, Sarah had found a job as a cleaner at Mercy General Hospital in the same neighborhood. The pay was much lower, but she needed to work. Every morning she walked the same streets where she used to take Ethan for strolls, feeling a pain in her chest that seemed endless. At the hospital, she met Mrs. Grace, a 62-year-old nurse who worked in the pediatric ward. She was a black woman with a warm smile and wisdom, gathered from decades of caring for children. "Sweetheart, you've got away with the little ones," Mrs. Grace said, watching how Sarah naturally interacted with the hospitalized children during her breaks. "Have you worked with kids before?" "I was a nanny," Sarah replied, her voice trembling, "but I was fired 2 weeks ago." "Fired? With all that tenderness you have, what happened?" Sarah told the whole story, from the sleepless night caring for Ethan with a fever to the moment she was let go. Mrs. Grace listened quietly, shaking her head. "Honey, you did everything right. Any mother would have done the same in your place. But he thought I was being negligent." "Negligent?" Mrs. Grace let out a bitter laugh. "Negligent would be leaving the baby dirty and cold. You improvised with love and care. That man doesn't understand a thing about children." Mrs. Grace's words brought Sarah some comfort, but her longing for Ethan kept gnawing at her heart. Meanwhile, in the apartment, the situation worsened by the day. Ethan had developed a severe rash the doctors couldn't identify. Victoria insisted she was following all hygiene protocols, but the baby clearly wasn't well. "Doctor, what could be causing this?" Michael asked the pediatrician, Dr. Richard Miller, during an emergency visit. "It's hard to say without further tests. Could be an allergy to a new product, changes in routine, stress. Babies are very sensitive to shifts in their environment." "Stress? But he's receiving top-quality professional care. Mr. Thompson, professional care is important, but babies also need stable emotional bonds. Has there been any significant change in his routine recently?" Michael hesitated before answering. "We switched nannies a few weeks ago." "Ah, that might explain a lot. Babies bond with the people who care for them. A sudden change can cause anxiety, and as a result, physical issues. But the new nanny is much more qualified. Technical qualifications are one thing, Mr. Thompson. Emotional connection is something entirely different." Michael left the office deep in thought. Could Ethan really be missing Sarah? That same afternoon, his assistant, Jennifer, walked into his office carrying a folder. "Mr. Thompson, while organizing your personal files, I found this," she said, placing a simple notebook on the desk. It was Sarah's. Michael opened the notebook and found page after page of detailed notes about Ethan. There were records of his sleep schedule, food preferences, reactions to different products, and even simple sketches showing positions that soothed him. "Ethan likes to be cradled on the left side," read one note. "Cries less when I play soft classical music," said another. "Mild allergy to X brand soap. Replace immediately." Michael kept reading, discovering a level of attention and care he had never imagined. Sarah had documented every detail of Ethan's life, creating a true personalized manual for his son. On the last page, he found something that made his throat tighten. Grandma's chamomile tea recipe, for when Ethan is fussy. A pinch of chamomile warm water, let it cool. "Always worked with my—" The sentence was unfinished, as if she had stopped writing mid-thought. "Jennifer, do you know why Sarah kept all these notes?" "Sir, she always said every child is unique. She believed knowing Ethan was the most important part of her job." Michael closed the notebook, feeling a strange weight in his chest. He had judged Sarah as neglectful, but the evidence showed the exact opposite. That night, Ethan had his worst episode yet. He cried for 4 hours straight, and nothing Victoria did could calm him. She tried every method from her manuals, but the baby seemed inconsolable. "Maybe we should call the doctor again," Victoria suggested, clearly stressed. Michael was exhausted. He picked Ethan up and instinctively began swaying him on the left side, just as he'd read in Sarah's notebook. To his surprise, Ethan stopped crying almost immediately. "How did you know to do that?" Victoria asked, impressed. Michael didn't answer. He was thinking of all the times he'd seen Sarah care for Ethan, with natural, intuitive movements he had never appreciated. The next day, he sought out Jennifer again. "Do you have Sarah's address?" "I do, sir. But may I ask why?" "I need to talk to her." Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, Sarah was really shaken by the dismissal. She truly cared for Ethan. "Do you still keep in touch with her?" "We talk sometimes. She got a job at Mercy General Hospital, works as a cleaner, but..." Jennifer hesitated. "But what?" "The nurses there say she has a special way with the children in the ward. They say the little ones calm down when she's around." Michael felt a pang of something that might have been regret. "Where exactly does she work in the hospital?" "Morning shift in the pediatric wing." Michael decided he needed to see Sarah, but he didn't know how to approach her after everything that had happened. 2 days later, Ethan developed a high fever that wouldn't break with medication. Dr. Richard Miller recommended hospitalization for observation and further tests. "It's just a precaution," the doctor explained, "but I'd prefer he stay under medical supervision until we figure out what's causing these episodes." Michael found himself at Mercy General Hospital, carrying Ethan into the pediatric wing. His heart beat faster when he realized it was exactly where Sarah worked. While the doctors examined Ethan, Michael walked through the corridors observing the hospital's activity. That's when he saw her. Sarah was at the end of the hallway, carefully mopping the floor. She was thinner and looked tired, but she had the same gentle expression he remembered. What surprised him was seeing her stop to talk affectionately to a little girl, about 5 years old, who was walking down the hall with a doll. "Hi, Princess," he heard her say. "How's your doll today?" "She's sick, Aunt Sari," the girl replied, "just like me. But you know what I think? I think you'll both get better real soon. Want to hear a secret? When I was little like you, my doll got sick too, and you know how she got better." The girl shook her head, curious. "With lots of love and kisses like this." Sarah kissed the doll's forehead, then the girl's. "There, now you'll both feel better in no time." The little girl smiled and ran down the hall, shouting, "Mommy, Aunt Sari cured my doll." Michael watched the scene with a tightness in his chest. How had he been so blind not to see the genuine kindness in that woman? When Sarah turned around, their eyes met. She froze immediately, the smile vanishing from her face. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Michael took a few steps toward her, but Sarah lowered her head and went back to work, completely ignoring his presence. "Sarah," he called softly. She kept mopping the floor as if she hadn't heard. "Sarah, please, I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say to you," she replied without looking up. "And I'm working. It's about Ethan. He's here in the hospital." Sarah stopped mopping, but still didn't look at him. "He's not well, Sarah. He's had a fever for 2 days and the doctors don't know what's wrong. You have a professional nanny taking care of him. I'm sure she'll know what to do." "No, she doesn't. No one does, Sarah. He won't stop crying, he's developed allergies, he won't eat..." Michael hesitated. "I think he misses you." Sarah finally looked up, and Michael saw her eyes were filled with tears. "You fired me because you thought I was neglectful, said I didn't know how to care for a child, and now you come looking for me because Ethan is sick." "I was wrong, Sarah. Completely wrong." "Yes, you were," said a voice behind them. They both turned to see Mrs. Grace approaching, her expression serious. "Mrs. Grace," Sarah said quickly, standing up. "Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing," the nurse said, looking straight at Michael. "Are you the father of the baby in room 312? "I am. Michael Thompson." "Mr. Thompson, my name is Grace Williams. I've been a nurse for 35 years, and I can tell you, in all my career, I've rarely seen someone with such a natural gift for caring for children as Sarah." Michael stayed silent. "This girl spends her breaks talking to the children in the hospital, helps desperate mothers, and I've seen her use her own money to buy toys for little ones who don't get visitors," Mrs. Grace continued. And you fired her because she bathed your son in the kitchen sink? Mrs. Grace, Sarah tried to interrupt. No, Sarah, I need to say this. The nurse raised her hand. Mr. Thompson, do you know your nanny stayed up all night caring for Ethan when he had a fever? Do you know she tested the water temperature? Who knows how many times to make sure it wouldn't hurt the baby? Do you know she improvised that solution because the heater broke and she didn't want Ethan to stay dirty and uncomfortable? Michael lowered his head. That girl treated your son as if he were her own child, said Mrs. Grace, her voice softening. And you fired her out of love. Fired her for caring too much. I know that now, murmured Michael. I found the notes she kept about Ethan. I saw how dedicated she was. Notes? Mrs. Grace looked at Sarah. You kept notes about the baby? Sarah nodded, embarrassed. She documented everything about Ethan, Michael explained. Every preference, every reaction, every little detail. It was like a personalized manual. Mrs. Grace smiled at Sarah. Sweetheart, that's what a mother does. You cared for that baby like a real mother. The tears Sarah had been holding back finally spilled over. He was everything to me, Mrs. Grace. After I lost... I know, my dear, I know. Michael glanced between the two women, sensing there was more to Sarah's story than he understood. Sarah, you lost... I lost my son 3 years ago, she said, wiping her tears. He was the same age as Ethan when he passed. That's why I cared for your son so tenderly. He reminded me of my little boy. Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. Sarah had lost a child and poured all her love into Ethan, and he had fired her in such a cruel, unfair way. Sarah, I didn't know. Forgive me. There's nothing left to forgive, Mr. Thompson. What's done is done. No, it's not, he said firmly. I need your help. Ethan isn't well, and I believe you're the only one who can help him. Sarah looked at Mrs. Grace, who nodded encouragingly. Ethan's room is 312, Sarah asked. Yes. Let me just finish my shift here, and then I can check on him. But as a visitor, not as a nanny. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 20 minutes later, Sarah knocked on the door of room 312. Michael opened it immediately, and she saw Ethan in the hospital crib, whimpering softly as Victoria tried to soothe him with clinical methods. Ethan, Sarah murmured, and the baby immediately turned his little head toward her voice. May I? She asked, holding out her arms. Michael nodded, and Victoria, surprised but curious, handed Ethan to Sarah. The moment he felt her familiar arms, he stopped crying. He looked up at Sarah's face with those big, dark eyes, and a tiny smile appeared on his lips. Hi, my love, Sarah whispered, gently rocking him on her left side. Aunt Sarah missed you too. Ethan made a soft, contented sound and nestled his head against Sarah's chest. Victoria watched, amazed. In 2 weeks, I've never been able to calm him like that. Every baby has their own way of being comforted, Sarah said kindly. Ethan likes to be rocked like this on the left side, and he also loves it when we sing softly to him. You sing to him? Michael asked. I used to, Sarah corrected. It's a song my mother sang to me, and one I sang to my... She didn't finish the sentence, but began humming a gentle melody instead. Ethan closed his little eyes, completely relaxed. Dr. Richard entered the room just then and paused, surprised. Wow, what an incredible change. I've been trying to examine him for 2 hours, but he wouldn't stop crying. Doctor, this is Sarah, Michael said. She was Ethan's nanny before. Ah, I see. The doctor stepped closer. Sarah, could you assist me? I need to examine him, but he gets very upset when others touch him. Sarah whispered softly to Ethan as the doctor performed the exam. The baby stayed calm the entire time. Interesting, said Dr. Richard. The fever has gone down, the vital signs are normal. It's remarkable how the presence of a familiar person can affect a child's condition. Doctor, what does that mean? Asked Michael. It means Ethan was suffering from severe stress. Babies can develop real physical symptoms when they feel insecure or anxious. The sudden change in his care routine must have deeply affected his well-being. Michael looked at Sarah, who was still humming to Ethan. "Sarah, I need to ask you something. I know I have no right, but could you come back to take care of Ethan?" Sarah stopped humming and looked at him. "Mr. Thompson, I know I don't deserve your consideration after what I did, but Ethan needs you. And I need you too. I need you to teach me how to be a better father." Victoria stepped closer. "Mr. Thompson, if I may, I believe Sarah should return. In 2 weeks, I've learned more about childcare by watching her here at Mercy General Hospital than in years of theoretical training." "Victoria, that's very kind of you," said Sarah. "But it's not about who knows more. It's about connection." "Exactly," agreed Dr. Richard. "And it's clear Ethan has a very strong bond with you, Sarah." Sarah looked down at Ethan, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Her heart was torn between the hurt from her unfair dismissal and the genuine love she felt for this baby. "I need to think," she finally said. "It's not an easy decision." "I understand," said Michael. "But while you think, could you stay here with him until he's discharged? As a visitor, not as an employee." Sarah hesitated, but Ethan stirred in her arms as if asking her to stay. "All right, I can stay until he gets better." For the next 3 days, Sarah spent most of her time at the hospital. She arrived before work, stayed during lunch, and returned after her shift. Ethan recovered quickly, and the doctors were impressed by his improvement. Michael also spent a lot of time at the hospital, watching how Sarah cared for Ethan. He saw how she talked to him during diaper changes, how she invented simple finger games, how she seemed to intuitively understand what the baby needed. "Sarah, can I ask you a personal question?" he said on the second day. "Go ahead. Your son, what was his name?" Sarah smiled sadly. "Noah. His name was Noah." "Noah is a beautiful name." "He was a beautiful baby," she said, adjusting Ethan's blanket. "He had big, curious eyes, just like Ethan. That's why when I started caring for him, it was like a part of Noah had come back to me." Michael felt his eyes well up. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have asked about your life, about what motivated you. I was a terrible employer." "You didn't know?" "But I should have asked. I should have seen how much you loved Ethan." "I really do love him," she said, kissing the baby's forehead. "He brought purpose back into my life. And you brought joy into his life, into our lives." Sarah looked at Michael, seeing sincerity in his eyes. "Mr. Thompson, if I come back to work for you, I need some guarantees." "Name them." "First, I need you to trust me. If any problems arise, I want us to talk before making any decisions." "Agreed." "Second, I want to keep taking my notes about Ethan. They help me take better care of him." "Agreed. In fact, I'd like you to teach me how to take notes too." "Third, I want to be part of the important decisions about his care, like choosing doctors, products he uses, those kinds of things." "More than agreed. I want your input on everything." Sarah took a deep breath. "Then I accept coming back." Michael smiled, more relieved than he ever thought possible. On the day Ethan was discharged, Michael Thompson got a surprise. His 70-year-old mother, Mrs. Margaret, had arrived from Boston without warning. "Michael, I came as soon as I heard my grandson was in the hospital," she said, walking into the hospital room. "How is he?" "He's much better, Mum, thanks to Sarah." Mrs. Margaret looked at Sarah, who was changing Ethan. "Are you the new nanny?" "Actually, I'm the old nanny," Sarah replied with a smile. "Who came back?" "Old?" Mrs. Margaret looked at Michael, confused. Michael had to explain the whole situation to his mother, from the unfair dismissal to their reconciliation at the hospital. Mrs. Margaret listened quietly, but her expression grew increasingly stern. "Michael Thompson," she said when he finished, "you fired this girl because she bathed Ethan in the kitchen sink. Mom, I've already admitted I was wrong. Are you joking with me?" Mrs. Margaret turned to Sarah. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry for my son. I raised him better than this." Mrs. Margaret, And you, she pointed at Michael, when you were a baby, how many times did I bathe you in the kitchen sink? How many times did your grandmother wash me in an aluminum tub in the backyard? Michael hung his head, ashamed. Sarah, Mrs. Margaret stepped closer, can I see how you care for my grandson? Sarah showed her how she changed Ethan, how she rocked him, how she talked to him. Mrs. Margaret watched everything carefully. Dear, you care for this baby with a mother's love. Any grandmother would feel at peace leaving their grandchild with you. Thank you, Mrs. Margaret. And you, Michael, the older woman said, turning to her son, will give this girl a raise and treat her with the respect she deserves. Of course, Mom. And you'll apologize properly. Not some half-hearted, embarrassed man's apology. A real apology from the heart. Michael looked at Sarah. Sarah, I'm truly sorry, from the bottom of my heart. You're a wonderful person, an exceptional professional, and I treated you unfairly and cruelly. I hope I can earn back your trust. Sarah felt her eyes filling with tears. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That means a lot to me. Mrs. Margaret nodded, satisfied. Now we're talking. Now let's go home and take proper care of this baby. But the day's surprises weren't over yet. When they arrived at the apartment, they found Victoria Reynolds packing her things. Victoria, you don't have to leave, Michael said. I can keep both of you. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, but it wouldn't be fair. Ethan clearly needs Sarah, and I've learned so much watching her. I'll use this experience in my next job. Victoria, you've been very professional, Sarah said. If you need a reference, you can count on me. Thank you, Sarah. You taught me that diplomas matter, but love and intuition aren't learned in school. When Victoria left, Michael turned to Sarah. Welcome back. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Actually, I'm the one getting a second chance, a chance to be a better father and a fairer employer. In the weeks that followed, life in the Thompson household changed completely. Michael started taking a more active role in caring for Ethan, always asking Sarah for advice on the best ways to interact with the baby. Sarah, why does he calm down more when we sing to him than when we play music on the stereo? He asked one morning. Because the human voice has variations and emotions that a recording can't match, she explained. Babies can tell when we're speaking or singing to them with love. Michael began learning the lullabies Sarah sang to Ethan. It was amusing to see him, a serious businessman, humming nursery rhymes during his son's bath. Mrs. Margaret stayed for 2 weeks and took the opportunity to get to know Sarah better. The two women developed a genuine friendship. Sarah, can I ask you something about your son? Mrs. Margaret said one afternoon as they had coffee in the kitchen. Of course, Mrs. Margaret. Do you still feel pain when you take care of Ethan? Sarah thought for a moment. At first, I did. It felt like I was betraying Noah's memory. But now I understand that caring for Ethan is a way to honor my son. It's like the love I had for Noah can be shared. You're a wise woman, my dear. You are too. You raised your son very well. I did, but sometimes he forgets the lessons, Mrs. Margaret said, laughing. Good thing you're here to remind him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, a month after Sarah's return, Michael received an unexpected call. It was from Elizabeth, his wife, who had been traveling for work in the United Kingdom for 3 months. Michael, I just saw the photos you sent of Ethan. He's gotten so big and so happy. He has. Sarah takes wonderful care of him. Sarah, Elizabeth sounded confused. But didn't you hire a nanny from Switzerland? Michael had to explain the whole story to Elizabeth, from the firing to the reconciliation. There was a long silence on the other end. Michael Thompson, what did you do? Elizabeth, I know it was a mistake. A mistake? You fired Sarah for bathing our son in the kitchen sink. Have you completely lost your mind? Why does everyone react the same way? Michael muttered. Because anyone with common sense would understand she did what any mother would do. Michael, I personally chose Sarah. I spent hours talking to her, checked her references, watched how she interacted with children. You personally chose her? Of course I did. Do you think I'd leave our son with just anyone? Sarah lost her own son, Michael. She cares for Ethan with a mother's love because she understands how precious a child is. Michael felt even worse. Elizabeth, I didn't know you had personally chosen her. Because you never ask about these things, you just assume your decisions are always right. You're right, but I fixed the mistake. Sarah came back, and Ethan is doing great. That's good, but we're going to have a serious talk when I get back. When are you coming back? Next week, and I want to see Sarah treated with the respect she deserves. Michael hung up, worried. Elizabeth was clearly furious with him, and he didn't know how their reunion would go. When he told Sarah about the conversation, she seemed nervous. Mr. Michael, will your wife be angry with me for accepting the dismissal? No, Sarah. She's angry with me for firing you. Elizabeth has always liked you very much. What a relief. I'm very fond of Mrs. Elizabeth. She's such a smart and kind woman. She is. And she has a great instinct for people. She's the one who said you'd be perfect to care for Ethan. The following week, Elizabeth arrived loaded with gifts and missing her son terribly. Ethan recognized her immediately and was overjoyed to see his mother. "My beautiful baby," she said, covering him in kisses. "Mommy missed you so much." After reuniting with her son, Elizabeth sought out Sarah. "Sarah, I've missed you. How are you?" "I'm well, Mrs. Elizabeth. I've missed you too. Tell me everything that happened. I want to hear your side of the story." Sarah recounted everything from the beginning, leaving out no details. Elizabeth listened carefully, shaking her head at times. "Sarah, I'm so sorry for everything you went through. Michael can be so stubborn sometimes." "But it all worked out in the end, Mrs. Elizabeth." "It did, but you shouldn't have had to go through that. And look," Elizabeth pulled an envelope from her pocket. "I bought you a few things in the United Kingdom. I hope you like them." Inside the envelope were expensive cosmetics and a card with a heartfelt message. "Mrs. Elizabeth, you didn't have to—" "Of course I did. You care for my son with so much love. It's the least I can do." That night, Michael and Elizabeth had a frank conversation about what had happened. "Michael, I'm disappointed in you," said Elizabeth. "I didn't expect this kind of behavior." "Elizabeth, I know I was wrong. You didn't just make a mistake. You were prejudiced and cruel. You fired a woman who lost her own son and gave motherly love to our Ethan. You're right. I have no excuses. And do you know what bothers me the most? It shows you don't listen to me. I spent weeks looking for the perfect nanny for Ethan, explained all the criteria I used, and you completely ignored it." Michael hung his head. "What can I do to make it right?" "First, never make decisions about Ethan without consulting me again. Second, treat Sarah not as an employee but as part of the family, because that's what she is to us." "I agree with everything." "And third, you'll learn to be a more present father and a husband who listens to his wife." "I'll try, Elizabeth. I promise." In the following days, Elizabeth watched the interaction between Sarah and Ethan and was moved to see how their bond had grown stronger. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" she said one morning. "Of course, Mrs. Elizabeth. Have you ever thought about having more children?" Sarah hesitated. "Sometimes I do, but it's complicated. After losing Noah, I'm afraid of getting too attached and hurting again." "I understand, but you know you're already a mother, right? To Ethan, you're like a second mum. That's how I feel too. Sometimes I forget he's not really my son. Sarah, family isn't just about blood. It's about love, care, and dedication. And you have all of that with Ethan." Elizabeth's words touched Sarah's heart deeply. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Ethan took his first steps, and Sarah was the one there to see it. "Oh my God!" she cried, overjoyed. "Ethan, you did it!" She immediately called Michael at the office and Elizabeth, who was in a meeting. When they arrived home, Ethan repeated the feat, walking from Sarah to Michael with wobbly but determined steps. "He took his first steps," said Michael, emotional. "And Sarah saw it first," said Elizabeth, smiling. "As it should be. That night, Michael did something that surprised everyone. He called Sarah into his office for a talk. "Sarah, Elizabeth and I talked, and we want to make you an offer." "What kind of offer, Mr. Michael?" "We want to give you a bigger room in the house, a raise, and—" He hesitated. "We want you to have a say in Ethan's upbringing." "What do you mean?" "We want you to help us choose his school when the time comes, attend his doctor's appointments, and have a voice in important decisions. Because you know Ethan better than anyone." Sarah was moved. "Mr. Michael, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept, because to us, you're not just an employee, you're family." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "I accept, with all my love." Elizabeth walked into the office at that moment. "Everything settled?" "Everything settled," Michael replied. "Good. Sarah, there's one more thing. Michael and I want you to be Ethan's godmother." "Godmother?" Sarah couldn't believe it. "Of course. Who else would deserve that title?" said Elizabeth, hugging her. The following months were the happiest of Sarah's life since losing Noah. Ethan grew up healthy and happy, always surrounded by love and care. One day, while playing with Ethan in the building's playground, Sarah Johnson ran into Mrs. Grace, who was visiting a friend in the building. "Sarah, how wonderful to see you, and this must be the famous Ethan." "Yes, Mrs. Grace. Ethan, say hi to Aunt Grace." "Hi to Auntie." Ethan waved shyly, hiding his face in Sarah's lap. "He's beautiful. And you're glowing, my dear. You look like a whole new person." "I'm very happy, Mrs. Grace. Mr. Michael and Mrs. Elizabeth treat me like real family." "That's wonderful. You deserve all the happiness in the world." "And how about you? How are things at the hospital?" "Oh, always busy. But you know what? Whenever I see a mother caring for her child with as much love as you care for Ethan, I think of you." "Mrs. Grace." "It's true, my dear. You taught me that love doesn't need a diploma or a certificate. It just needs heart." When they returned home, Ethan was sleepy. Sarah rocked him gently, singing the same lullaby she used to sing for Noah years ago. Michael watched from the bedroom door and smiled. He had learned so much in those months. He learned that a person's worth isn't in certificates or appearances, but in their ability to love and devote themselves. He learned that being a father is more than providing financially. It's being present, listening, understanding. "Sarah," he said softly. "Yes, Mr. Michael. Thank you for teaching me how to be a better father. Thank you for giving me the chance to be a mother again." Ethan fell asleep peacefully, surrounded by the love of two people who loved him unconditionally. 3 years passed. Ethan was now talking, running, asking 1,000 questions a day, and he always treated Sarah like his second mother, affectionately calling her Sari. "Sari, can we play with cars?" he'd ask every morning. "Of course, sweetheart. But first, let's have breakfast. And then play. And then play." Michael had become a much more present father. He came home from work earlier, took part in Ethan's routine, and always consulted Sarah on important decisions. Elizabeth also valued Sarah's presence in the family more and more. There was a beautiful harmony between the two women, each respecting the other's role in Ethan's life. One day, Sarah received an unexpected call. It was from a family in Chicago offering her a job with a much higher salary to care for newborn twins. "Sarah, we're offering double what you're earning now," the woman on the phone said. "The twins need special care, and your references are impeccable." Sarah didn't know how to respond. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, but we need an answer by Friday." When she hung up, Sarah was confused. It was an incredible financial opportunity, but it would mean leaving Ethan, whom she already considered her own child. That evening, she talked to Michael and Elizabeth about the offer. "It's quite an opportunity," Michael said. "Doubling your salary is no small thing." "But do you want to go?" Elizabeth asked, watching Sarah's expression. "I don't know. Financially, it would be great. But Ethan isn't your son, Sarah," Michael said gently. "You have every right to seek better opportunities." "I know he's not my biological son," Sarah replied, "but he's my son in my heart, and I can't imagine my life without him." Elizabeth smiled. "Then you already have your answer." But it's so much money. Sarah, Michael stepped in. If it's about money, we'll match their offer. Mr. Michael, that's not necessary. Yes, it is. You're worth far more than any amount of money. To that family, you'd just be an employee. To us, you're real family. Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. Thank you. You know how much this means to me. We do, Elizabeth said, hugging her. And you know how much you mean to us. On Friday, Sarah called her family in Chicago and declined the offer. I have a family here who needs me, she said, looking at Ethan playing on the living room floor. That evening, Michael came home from work with a surprise. Sarah, come here. I need to show you something. He handed her an official envelope. What is this? She asked. Open it and see. Sarah opened the envelope and found legal documents inside. They were papers to make her Ethan's legal guardian in case anything happened to Michael and Elizabeth. Michael, Elizabeth, We want you to officially be responsible for Ethan if anything happens to us, Elizabeth explained, because we know you'd love him and care for him as if he were your own son. Because he already is my own son, Sarah said, crying. He really is, Michael agreed, and you're already family. That night, Ethan was especially affectionate. He sat on Sarah's lap before bedtime and asked, Sari, will you stay with me forever? Forever, my love. Always. Even when I'm all grown up. Even when you're all grown up. And when you get really old. When I get really old, you'll take care of me, just like I take care of you. Ethan laughed and gave Sarah a little kiss on the cheek. I love you, Sari. I love you too, my little one. Michael watched from the doorway and thought about how he'd almost lost this wonderful woman over a foolish prejudice. Sarah had transformed not just Ethan's life, but the entire family's. She'd taught them all about unconditional love, about true family, about what really matters in life. 5 years later, Ethan was in school, a bright, affectionate boy who always talked about Sari to his classmates and teachers. Sari taught me how to tie my shoes, he'd say proudly. Sari makes the best chocolate cake in the world. When I grow up, I want to take care of Sari, just like she takes care of me. The teachers often remarked how secure and happy Ethan was, and Michael and Elizabeth knew much of that was thanks to Sarah's love and care. One day, Sarah got a call from Mrs. Grace. Sarah, my dear, I need to tell you something. What is it, Mrs. Grace? I'm retiring from the hospital after 40 years of work. That's wonderful news. You deserve the rest. And do you know the best thing that happened in those 40 years? It was meeting you, my dear. Seeing how you turned your pain into love was one of the most beautiful lessons of my life. Sarah was moved. Mrs. Grace, you helped me so much when I needed it most, and you inspired me to keep believing in people's goodness. I hope you'll be very happy, Sarah. You deserve all the good things life has to offer. When she hung up, Sarah reflected on her journey. She'd lost Noah, which at the time felt like the end of the world. But that sorrow had led her to Ethan, and Ethan had brought purpose and joy back into her life. Michael, who was in the living room, noticed her emotion. Everything okay, Sarah? I was just thinking how funny life is. Sometimes we lose something only to gain something even better. Are you talking about Noah? Yes. Losing him was the most painful thing I've ever been through. But if I hadn't gone through that pain, maybe my heart wouldn't have been ready to love Ethan the way I do. And we're so grateful for that, Michael said. Ethan was very lucky to have you in his life. I was the lucky one. Ethan gave me hope again. That night at dinner, Ethan made an important announcement. Dad, Mom, Sari, I've decided something. What have you decided, sweetheart? Elizabeth asked. When I grow up, I want to be a doctor. A doctor? That's great. Why? Michael asked. Because I want to take care of babies just like Sari takes care of me. I want to make kids happy. Sarah smiled, her heart filled with pride. You're going to be a wonderful doctor, Ethan. And you'll help me study, Sari? Always, my love, always. Michael and Elizabeth exchanged a glance, knowing they'd made the right decision by bringing Sarah back into their lives. She wasn't just Ethan's nanny. She was the person who had helped raise a loving, confident boy determined to do good in the world. And so, the family that had nearly fallen apart over a misunderstanding became stronger than ever. Michael learned to be a better father and husband. Elizabeth learned to cherish the special people in her life even more. Ethan grew up surrounded by unconditional love. And Sarah found a new family where she could share all the love she had to give. Years later, when Ethan was in medical school, he wrote an essay about the most important people in his life. He spoke about his parents, who loved him unconditionally, but he dedicated half the essay to Sarah. "Sarah isn't my biological mother," he wrote, "but she's the woman who taught me about love, care, and dedication. She lost a child and turned her pain into love for me. She showed me that family isn't just about blood, it's about choice. Every day she chose to love me, protect me, and teach me to be a better person. When I graduate as a doctor, I want to be the kind of physician she would be, someone who cares for people with genuine love. Because that's what she taught me, that caring for someone is an act of love, not just a job." When Michael read the essay, he cried. He remembered the day he'd almost lost that extraordinary woman because of a foolish prejudice. Sarah hadn't just shaped Ethan into an exceptional young man. She had transformed their entire family into better people. And now, whenever he saw a baby being cared for with tenderness, Michael remembered the most important lesson he'd learned. True love doesn't need a diploma, a certificate, or a protocol. True love comes from the heart, shows itself in the little everyday things, and builds bonds that last forever. The end. Now, tell me what you thought of this story of resilience and true love. Do you believe Sarah made the right choice by coming back to care for Ethan? And did Michael truly redeem himself for the mistake he made? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from, and if you've ever been through a similar situation in your life. We love reading about your experiences. Don't forget to like this video to support our channel, and most importantly, subscribe so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one. Thank you so much for being here with us.